Hi folks, this is Tony for aminutetomidnight.com. Last video I made, I mentioned how by and large the church is silent globally on the end time events that we're seeing unfold. Silent on the rising tyranny of governments exceeding reasonable powers, and silent on the move towards global government. However, here in the video I just want to play is one pastor and his son who have not been silent, and I'm sure you've all heard of them, Pastor Pawlowski and his son. This is a video that is certainly worth watching. I don't know that I trust the European Parliament to do anything, or why he was even invited to speak, but nevertheless his message that he delivered, both the son and father, is very powerful, and if only more churches had taken action like this, so much of what we saw during COVID, I believe, would not have happened. Firstly, this is from Fox News. Son of Canadian pastor facing prison for sermon blasts Trudeau before European Union Parliament draws standing ovation. The son of a Canadian pastor drew raucous applause from the European Parliament earlier this month when he pleaded for international pressure in the case of his father, who potentially faces 10 years in prison after delivering a sermon to truckers blocking the US-Canada border last year. Nathaniel Pawlowski was invited to address the European Union Parliament in Brussels on behalf of his father, Pastor Arthur Pawlowski, who has been continuously entangled with authorities in Calgary, Alberta, since he ejected police and public health officials from his Cave of Adullam church as they attempted to inspect it for COVID-19 compliance during an Easter service in 2021. Calgary Police Service arrested the pastor 5 times after he continued to conduct services in defiance of a court order, including one in the middle of a busy highway on his way home from church. On another occasion, he was arrested on the tarmac of Calgary International Airport following a 4-month speaking tour in the US. So here's the 8-minute clip I want you to watch.
I'm going to speak about the consequences of abuse of power under the guise of health, set out by the WHO framework that local governments take upon themselves to implement. I'm the son of Pastor Arthur Pawlowski, who you will hear in just a minute. I am here today in desperation, a cry for help. I would like to stand here and tell you all the things about freedom and democracy that I like, but I no longer know those things. They have been taken away from us Canadians. Canada has fallen. We no longer have freedom of religion or freedom of speech or the right to protest or assemble or associate or express ourselves or have free media or disagree with the government. Anyone who does so is arrested, charged, and jailed as political dissidents. My father was just found guilty of inciting mischief for giving a sermon to the truckers when they went and stood for our rights in 2022. A Christian sermon that referenced the solidarity movement was criminal in our government's eyes. A charge that has a penalty of up to 10 years in prison. This case sets a precedent to all Canadians and the world if you allow this to happen, that anybody, including politicians and media, do not have the freedom to say or express what they have on their hearts for fear that what they say is mischief and could be liable to prison. I myself have been charged for preaching and reading the Bible publicly because the government claims the Bible isn't inclusive and is hateful. This is what the Canadian government is doing to us. In my father's case, the Crown prosecutor, and I believe in naming names because our oppressors do not get away with this without being named and shamed. So the Crown prosecutor, Stephen Johnston, and Judge Gordon Crink claimed that when Pastor Arthur, my father, referenced the solidarity movement in his 19-minute sermon, it was an act of mischief against the government. The very solidarity movement that this parliament reveres and has placards about all over the building. The peaceful movement that broke the Iron Curtain and repelled the communist hold on Europe. The movement the Canadian government condemns and says is unacceptable. So I ask you, the rest of the free world, to intercede on Canada's behalf and pressure the Canadian tyrants to stop persecuting law-abiding free Canadians, especially clergy. They simply did their duty and gave hope. My father told the truckers to stand for their rights, solidarity style, and to do so peacefully. His sentencing is this August 9th, 2023, and if he goes down, we are all lost as Canadians. If a pastor goes to prison, what can they do to the rest of us? For giving a sermon in Canada, they are no better than the tyrants of old. So please, I ask you for help and to pressure Canada on this matter and to help us deal with our oppressors who act like modern-day Caligulas. Trudeau is a modern-day Caligula. We cannot allow these mad emperors to run mad. And remember, all of this is being done under the guise of health, safety, and protecting us. By stripping our rights and ushering in tyranny, we must not allow Canada to treat its citizens, and especially clergy, this way. The WHO has structured a way to take away our rights, and our local governments are doing that. Now you will hear my father. He will speak via video. So this is Pastor Arthur Pawlowski, political prisoner.
I am Artur Pawlowski, born behind the Iron Curtain in Poland, crushed by the iron fist of oppression.
The armed forces now rule in Poland with martial law and the threat of execution for those who break it.
Do wojskowej diktatury.
The horrors inflicted by unchecked despotism have burned their mark into my memory. The December of 1981, when martial law turned our cities into shadows. The biting winters when the quest for bread met with empty shelves. The silenced voices of cutting forest. These memories led me to vow, never again would I bow to tyranny, never again would I let freedom's voice be muffled. This promise guided me to Canada, a beacon of liberty. You can keep it. I have a court order that says your actions are illegal. Back up, respect my rights. Freedom is more than a word. It's a measure of our humanity, courage, and determination. It's a cost borne by soldiers, journalists, and volunteers. We are providing necessity. But when the shadow of tyranny found me again, denying me the right to serve the needy, disregarding its own rules, I remembered, never again.
After receiving new enforcement powers for public gatherings Thursday, Calgary police have arrested Artur and David Pawlowski.
Get out of this property, immediately get out.
Premier of Alberta right now declared the protesting is illegal. So when I opened my church in the protest against the government overreach, I spent 3 days in jail for my crime of opening the church in a free and democratic society.
Like a soldier, I've tasted the bitter price of freedom, endured the cold handcuffs and harsh judgment. The soldier stands unflinching, knowing that freedom bears a cost. There is a price to pay. Like a journalist, I've dared to speak truth to power. My voice, not ink, reverberates through Calgary and beyond, fulfilling the duty of free speech. Like a volunteer, I've served my community with deeds, not mere words, knowing that true freedom lies in service to others. St. Augustine, a pillar of our Christian faith, said, hope has two beautiful daughters, anger and courage. anger at the status quo, and courage to change it. From my house arrest, I pose this question to you, honorable members of the European Parliament. How many nights in cold cell would you endure for freedom? What lengths would you traverse to defend your people's rights? You see, I have spent 50 nights in jail standing up for our rights to gather and worship. It's time to rise, to say never again, to face the lingering shadows of the 20th century, to challenge the injustice of today. It's in your best interest for people like me to survive. Because when we go down, be sure of it, you will be next.
That was a powerful message in that video. But you know what's scary? Is that there will be no shortage of people in law enforcement or armies or government departments who will gladly participate in this system, believing it's for the greater good. How were the dictatorships of Nazi Germany or Soviet Russia able to operate? If you watch videos from the past, you can see masses of brainwashed people going along with the agendas and applauding them. Humanity hasn't changed. We saw that during COVID with the willingness of the majority of the population to go along with the newfound government controls, and there was no shortage of boots on the ground and uniforms willing to enforce them, using at times heavy-handed force. We have the WHO and the UN seeking even greater powers for the next big crisis when it occurs, and it doesn't bode well for the future. I just want to cover a few things that I've come across recently in the last few days and articles that are important as well. The first one, new digital money will mark the end of First Amendment, Second Amendment and all human freedom. And this comes from leohoman.com. Just reading a little bit of it. World Economic Forum members are giddy about the progress being made towards global digital cash as governments around the globe prepare for full-blown cashless societies. During the WEF's summer meeting in China last month, attendees could not contain their excitement about the rapid advancement of central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs as we know them, which are programmable tokens operated on a blockchain platform powered by artificial intelligence that will result in the gradual end of all human freedom. Your freedom of movement and your freedom to make purchases of products or services the government and its corporate partners considers dangerous to the environment, dangerous to public health or for any other reason will become easily regulated, restricted and outright banned. So that was from Leo Homan. But you know, CBDCs will be programmable. Augustin Carstens from the Bank of International Settlements has told us that.
A key difference with the CBDC is that central bank will have absolute control on the rules and regulations that will determine the use of that expression of central bank liability. And also we will have the technology to enforce that.
Where you can spend the new money and how you'll be able to spend it will be quite literally built into the new central bank digital currencies. The leaders at the World Economic Forum, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, Bank for International Settlements and others have plainly told us that's how it will be. The CBDCs will not just be money in the traditional sense, they are in fact designed to be tools of the UN, the global government and part of their socialistic, political and ideological agendas. Those who issue the CBDCs will have the power to turn on and off transactions of every kind at the touch of a button. The global controllers will have the power to determine exactly what the programmable CBDC money will be able to be spent on and by whom. Just look at Communist China and their social credit scores and the control the Chinese government exerts on their people through those things like the social credit scores. It's a blueprint for the rest of the world. Anyone who doesn't toe the party line can have their ability to work, trade, travel and purchase cut off by the government. And this is the model for the rest of the world under digital IDs and central bank digital currencies. Every transaction, large and small, will be tracked. They'll try and enforce new behaviour patterns like having to live within one's allotted carbon footprint allowance, or your digital money will be switched off. Speak against climate change, it could be switched off. Speak against mRNA shots or LBGT+, all those climate change fraudulent statistics and so forth, and your social credit score goes down, and with it your ability to use the digital money. Most of the population has no clue that this system of tyranny in the making is already well established. More nations are rolling out digital IDs and making them mandatory for citizens to access bank accounts. And this also comes from leohoman.com. The nation of Ethiopia has announced it will make the transition to mandatory digital IDs for all citizens, and with the chief enforcement tool being the major banks. Using a World Bank-supported digital ID system with standards also approved by an 8-nation working group within the UN, all citizens of Ethiopia will need to have a digital ID in order to use banking services in the country by 2025. This is just the latest evidence that banks are driving the digital identity agenda. Digital identity must precede digital money in the reset to a completely digital global economy. Biometric Update reported that Ethiopia is implementing a World Bank-sponsored MOSIP-based digital ID project, which intends to have all citizens enrolled by 2025. The country also recently contracted IrisGuard to support benefits payment to citizens with iris biometrics. So if you want a bank account or wish to access government benefits, you will need a digital ID in Ethiopia. And this is the plan for all nations. Eventually, you'll need the digital ID to buy and sell and log onto the internet. So, globalgovernmentforum.com, there was an article that came out in 2022, and it's talking about 8 countries set out principles for the future of digital ID. A working group on digital identity, which comprises 8 member states, has drafted a set of high-level principles to support the development of mutually recognised and interoperable digital ID systems and infrastructure. In its report, the Digital Government Exchange Digital Identity Working Group said its goal is to enhance trade agreements and to facilitate economic recovery from COVID-19, for example, to support the opening of domestic and international borders. So this is from over a year ago, but now we're starting to see the results. The 11 principles call for digital ID infrastructure to be open, transparent, reusable, user-centric, inclusive, accessible, multilingual, secure and private, technologically neutral and compatible with data portability, administratively simple, able to preserve information, and effective and efficient. In other words, that sounds all nice, doesn't it? But you know it's all about control. Established in 2020, the DIWG comprises of Australia, Canada, Finland, Israel, I hate to say it, New Zealand, Singapore, the Netherlands and the United Kingdom, and it is chaired by Australia's Digital Transformation Agency. The group was initially formed to allow its members to share experiences and opportunities for the use of digital identity initiatives with a focus on the response to and recovery from the impacts of COVID-19 on governments and people. But as I said, it's really all about control. Folks, that's the way this is all going. You need to recognise it. I don't want people to be worried or become afraid. It's pointless. You know, we just have to see the writings on the wall, do what we can to resist it. Don't bow down to the system ourselves, but realise that if this is indeed the end time spoken of in the Bible and we're heading in towards a tribulation, these things are not really going to stop. But as individuals, we can fight it in the sense that we do not submit personally to the system, that we keep our morals and we keep our wits about us, and we do some preparation physically and spiritually. That's really the bottom line. We need to be prepared. We need to be mentally prepared, spiritually prepared, and physically prepared as well. and have already decided where our line is drawn and don't step over it, because it's going to get more and more difficult for Christians, as we're seeing from Pastor Pawlowski and what happened to him during COVID. And that's just the beginning. You look at what's happening in China and the clampdowns in China on Christians and anybody that's dissident against the Chinese government. You look at the push towards World War III at the moment. It seems like NATO and the West is hell-bent on causing or entering into World War III over Ukraine, and then China as well with Taiwan. It's like the US dollar's going down. The global world reserve currency will not much longer be the USD, and war seems inevitable at this point on a much larger scale. I hate to say it, I hope I'm wrong. Anyway, that's what I wanted to cover in this video. Folks, don't forget to subscribe to us at aminutemidnight.com, and we are also run 100% by donations. For those that had PayPal donations set up straight through PayPal recurring, it's every one of them is failing. Please cancel them if you haven't already done so. Did it through PayPal like that? And either, if you want to donate, use DonorBox directly on our website, or you can donate through PayPal straight into my email address, or you can still use PayPal through DonorBox if you set something up there. But really, it's kind of a little discouraging when I see all these failed payments day in, day out. Most of them, they're not very big, but still. Anyway, I want to thank the people that do donate, and if anyone does want to help us, they can donate at aminutemidnight.com. So that's it for this video. God bless, and God willing, we'll be back with another one in a very short few days' time.